The boundary is not a rule you set. This needs to be established before anything else, because the word boundary has been so thoroughly colonized by the language of relational strategy that it has almost entirely lost its connection to what a genuine boundary actually is, which is not a line drawn for another person's benefit or compliance, not a rule announced in the hope of producing a particular behavioral change in someone else, not a communication directed at the avoidance psychology with the specific intention of producing a particular response. A genuine boundary is an honest expression of the self's actual limits, the specific, interior, this is where I end and you begin quality, of someone who has a real relationship with their own worth and their own needs, and who communicates that relationship naturally, without the strategic deployment of the communication, as the honest expression of who they actually are. Not a line drawn around behavior, a truth about the person, about what they will and will not inhabit, what they will and will not accept, what the interior knows it requires in order to remain the full, genuine, self-respecting version of itself that it is when it is being most honest with itself. The boundary that makes the avoidant fall in love, not temporarily, not in the anxiety-driven, panic-activated way of someone managing the fear of the permanent loss, but in the deep, structural, forever way that the genuine bonding pieces have examined, is this boundary, the boundary of the self. The specific, non-negotiable, entirely genuine boundary between who you actually are and the version of yourself that the avoidance dynamic, over time, has been asking you to become. The version of yourself that the avoidance dynamic asks you to become has been examined across many pieces in this collection. It is the version that has learned to calibrate the expression of need to what the avoidance system can tolerate without activating the management's full deployment. The version that has learned to moderate the emotional expression to the level that doesn't trigger the deflection. The version that has absorbed the withdrawals without naming them. The version that has made itself smaller in the specific, incremental, barely perceptible in any single moment way of someone who has been learning from the consistent evidence of the avoidance responses, which parts of themselves are safe to bring and which require management before arrival. This version is not a deliberate construction. It is not the result of a decision to be less than yourself. It is the natural, gradual, entirely understandable adaptation of someone who genuinely cares about a connection and has been learning from the connection's feedback how to sustain the connection at the level the connection's current configuration can sustain. It is love doing what love does, adjusting, accommodating, making room, in a context where the adjusting and accommodating and making room are being asked for in a way that exceeds what they should be asking for. The boundary of the self is the honest refusal of this version, not the dramatic confrontational refusal of someone who has decided to make a point. The quiet, daily, entirely genuine refusal of someone who has arrived at the honest knowledge that the version the dynamic has been asking for is not the version they are, and who has decided in the private, self-directed way of someone whose primary commitment is to their own genuine interior, that the genuine version is what the connection will receive or the connection will not be sustained. This boundary, the boundary of the genuine self, does something to the avoidance monitoring system that no other relational input can do as consistently or as profoundly. It removes the most fundamental distortion in the monitoring system's data. The monitoring system has been receiving, across the duration of the connection, a version of you that has been adapted to the dynamic. The caring was real, the warmth was real, the genuine qualities were present. But the expression of all of these was being filtered through the learned calibration of someone who had discovered what the dynamic could absorb and who had been, however genuinely motivated, presenting the calibrated version rather than the complete one. The monitoring system was assessing the calibrated version, and the calibrated version, however genuinely it reflected the underlying caring and warmth and genuine qualities, carried the specific monitoring system legible quality of someone whose expression was organized around the avoidance reception of it. The organization was the tell. The caring beneath it was real. but the caring's expression was shaped by the learned knowledge of what the avoidance system could receive, which made the expression organized around the avoidant rather than the natural overflow of a genuine interior. The monitoring system read the organization, and the organization, however genuinely motivated, placed the calibrated version in the category of manageable input, of something the management protocol was designed to process, of something the management could engage with through its standard functions of distance creation and management of intimacy pressure. The genuine version, the complete, uncalibrated, boundary of the self-holding version of you that exists before the adaptation, does not carry this organization. It cannot. Because the genuine version is not organized around the avoidance reception of it. It is organized around itself, around its own genuine values, perceptions, needs, and ways of being. It expresses itself not because the expression has been assessed for its impact on the avoidant and found acceptable, but because the expression is the natural, honest output of a genuine interior that is not asking permission before it arrives. This version produces a different reading in the monitoring system, the genuine article reading, that cannot be managed against reading, that this person is not available for management reading, that the pieces on respect and on what the avoidant values examined in detail. The genuine article reading, produced by the uncalibrated genuine version of you, does something in the avoidance interior that the calibrated version was never producing, despite the calibrated version's genuine caring and warmth and all the real qualities it was expressing. It reaches the interior, not the management, the interior. The interior is where the falling in love that lasts forever happens. The management is where the managed distance dynamic happens. The calibrated version was reaching the management. The genuine version reaches the interior. The interior's falling, the specific, structural, permanent bonding place falling examined in the forever bonding piece, is produced by the genuine article reading. By the monitoring system's assessment that what is being encountered is not the organized around me expression of someone who has learned what I can receive, but the natural overflow of someone who simply, genuinely, constitutively is who they are, and who is bringing that full, genuine, uncalibrated version to the connection, regardless of whether the connection's current configuration can adequately receive it. The regardless is the thing. The genuine version is not checking with the dynamic before it arrives, is not assessing the avoidance current capacity and calibrating the expression accordingly, is simply there, in the full, honest, take it or leave it quality of someone who has a genuine relationship with their own worth and who is not willing to present the adapted version as though the adaptation were the truth. This regardless is the boundary of the self in its most essential expression. And this boundary, the honest, daily, not as strategy, but as genuine self-expression boundary of someone who brings the uncalibrated genuine version, regardless of the dynamic's current capacity to receive it, is the thing that produces the interior's falling. Forever is the word in the title, and it deserves examination because the forever of genuine avoidant bonding is not the conventional forever of romantic commitment. It is not the sustained, explicit, behaviorally demonstrated forever of a partner who shows up consistently and chooses you daily and makes the relationship a visible, sustained, unglamorous priority across time. It is the interior forever, the permanent bonding forever, the specific, structural, this person has been installed in my interior in the place where the permanent things live forever that the avoidance genuine article assessment produces. The forever that persists regardless of the avoidance behavioral choices. The forever that the management cannot revise. The forever that the too late realization piece described, the carrying across all the subsequent experience of the avoidance life, of the specific, irreplaceable presence of someone the monitoring system has permanently assessed as the genuine article. This forever is real, and it is produced by the boundary of the self, by the genuine, uncalibrated, regardless of the dynamic's current capacity version of you, that the boundary of the self holds in place against the dynamic's continuous, gradual, never quite conscious pressure toward the adapted version. The adapted version is likable, can be cared for, can receive genuine warmth from the avoidant. But it does not produce the interior's falling. It does not produce the forever bonding. Because the monitoring system's assessment of the adapted version is not the genuine article reading, it is the organized around me reading. And organized around me things are managed, not bonded to in the permanent way. The boundary of the self is not set for the avoidant. It is not communicated to the avoidant as a condition or a rule or a warning about what will happen if the boundary is not respected. It is simply lived daily in the small, ordinary, entirely non-dramatic moments of bringing the genuine version regardless of whether the genuine version is being adequately received. It is the opinion expressed when the opinion is honestly held rather than when the opinion has been assessed as safe to express. The need communicated when the need is present rather than when the need has been calibrated to the level the dynamic can absorb without triggering the management. The response to the avoidance behavior that is honest rather than accommodating. The self that is present in the interaction in its actual, complete, uncalibrated form rather than in the version the connection's feedback has been shaping. These are not performances of the boundary. They are the boundary's natural expressions in the ordinary moments of a genuine life being genuinely lived. The boundary of the self makes the avoidant fall in love forever, not because it is a strategy that produces this outcome. Because it is the truth of who you are, expressed honestly, and the truth of who you are is the thing the avoidance interior has been reaching for. Beneath the management, beneath the self-sufficiency narrative, beneath all the fear-driven distance creation, across the entire history of their defended, yearning, trying to protect themselves relational life. The genuine version of you is the genuine article reading. The genuine article reading is the forever bonding. The forever bonding is the interior's response to finally, after all the managed connections and all the calibrated versions and all the organized around me expressions that the management could process without being reached, finally encountering the real thing, the uncalibrated, regardless boundary of the self-holding, this is who I actually am version. The one that reaches the interior because it is not reaching for the interior, because it is simply, fully, honestly, irreducibly itself. And that, the specific, constitutive, genuine article quality of someone who is simply themselves, is the one thing the avoidance interior was always, beneath everything, waiting for.